advantage of the opportunity. But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes.
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. Joshua, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving
week of the year. Rivalry
It
week,
is.
turkey. Great week.
Yes, you know where I'm at. This is the alpha holiday for me. This is it. This is my Super Bowl. And then we get the weekend of football. I can't wait.
So I do want to underscore that because I feel like this is a week where the turkey gets maligned. And a lot of people are like, this is why we only have it once a year. Not a good holiday. Only a good holiday because of the side dishes. No, turkey makes the holiday. And I love turkey. I wish we could have it more time of the year. I've actually been looking up slow cooker recipes to just get a turkey breast and make it more often. You're spatchcocking your turkey. I want to hear all about it. I'm excited for this. I love
the anti-turkey people, your auntie or your grandma, whoever's been making it, dries the turkey out. That's why you don't like it. Whoever makes a turkey can't cook. So I'm just going to call out whoever's doing that in your house. You know how to cook, Nicole. I know how to cook. If you do it right, it is delicious. You get the crispy skin, you get the juicy meat, you get nice, flavorful, delicious meal, and it can be the centerpiece. That's right. You put the drippings in there, you get a nice gravy. It can be the perfect centerpiece if you know how to cook it. So I'm spatchcocking mine. I'm gonna dry brine it. I'm gonna season it up, get the butter going, all the different things. It's gonna be phenomenal. Doing some mac and cheese. I'm making a couple pies. I'm making a peach cobbler. My mom is doing dressing. That's what we call it. We don't call it stuffing. She's doing sweet potato casserole. So we're gonna have a great spread. We also have a ham for the anti-turkey folks out there.
We don't have an option. It's turkey or bust.
I like the ham because I fry it up afterwards and make nice ham sandwich leftovers. So it's something that I want for the after more than the day of. But yeah, we got to stop. We got to stop with the hate on turkey specifically and letting that drag down Thanksgiving. Like, we got to get right as a society.
Thank you. Yeah. So ours, we do just like the traditional oven roasted turkey. We've got a great brine rub. I was telling you this. I think I sent it to you from Williams-Sonoma, this like autumn rub or whatever they call it.
So good.
Phenomenal. And then our go-to special sides, we've got the corn souffle. Corn souffle is we have to make two of it. We'll have like a small group this year. We're still going to make two. I do stuffed artichokes, very Italian. We have like a lot of Italian side dishes. So the alternate for the option for turkey is like, we'll have like stuffed shells or big ziti or like a pasta dish, like a full
Italians do
Italian dish.
Thanksgiving right, because you get a nice blend. You get the traditional Thanksgiving fare, but there's also going to be a lot of options on the table, which I like.
Sure do. Should we talk about football though? Because it is also the best week of the year.
Yes, we should.
I know you're nervous because we are inching closer to the game.
Yeah, my nerves, I think, have calmed a little bit. Like I talked myself into this idea that Ryan learned from last year, and like Ohio State is like definitively the better team. But like I'm also getting the experience of Ohio State fans in the 90s and like the Cooper days, where regardless of how good the football team was, you were absolutely scared for this one. So the nerves are still there, but they're not as bad as when we recorded Saturday night.
Okay, well, we'll get to that game in just a little bit. Let's catch up on some of the news of the week. Really big news out of Tallahassee. Florida State is sticking with Mike Norvell. He gets another year. We've talked a lot about that on this pod, and like a $60 million buyout. Put out a very, I don't know, it was like shaky, but we called it a dreaded vote of confidence in the midseason because it felt like it was saying, hey, we're going to evaluate this at the end of the year. Like, let's get our money and our checkbooks ready to pay this buyout. They decided not to do it. Florida State is 5-6, guaranteed not to have a winning season, needs to beat Florida to even get to a bowl game. 4 of the 6 losses this season have been one-score games. There were video replay controversial finishes in a couple of them as well. Mike Norvell said in his first public comments since Florida State announced that he was coming back, that he was very grateful to the administration for their belief in what is ahead of us. Quote, I don't think we're far off. I believe that we are close. You lose 6 games and it sucks. We have absolutely not been close to the expectation of what I have for this team and for what is the overall expectation of Florida State football. But I do believe in where we're going. I do believe in some of the progress we've been able to see, but it is not consistent enough. Now, this is one of those situations where the school is committing to more money for the roster. They're going to redo the front office apparatus tied to this program and trying to fix some of those other pieces around the head coach before deciding to pay a massive buyout. I know we talk about these buyouts as if money isn't real, but $60 million is a lot of money. This is also a school that is not in the Big Ten or the SEC, so they're not getting the same check from the media rights year in and year out. They fought to get those incentives, those success initiatives and stuff based on brand. Well, they didn't get a ton of viewership for their games this year because they weren't very good. So you're not hitting those benchmarks and getting those bonuses. They also, of course, have their eye on that exit fee potentially at the end of the decade, which would be $75 million. Oof. They decide not to go into this carousel. They decide not to spend the money and then have to go spend a lot more money to get another coach. Did this surprise you, Joshua?
Not necessarily. Like, I think for Florida State, the standard is high, and maybe that's where the biggest part of the surprise is coming. But we've seen this trend of like, we'll spend less money to try to invest in the program under this coach than we would if we got the buyout together. So let's just go ahead and run it back one more and really see. I agree with Mike Norvell in terms of how close it feels versus like last year was a complete disaster. I think this year you can like logically understand how the margins were thin and this is a much better team and just some of the bounces didn't go their way. But I think the part that you talked about the money for the roster and the front office apparatus intrigues me the most in this conversation. They've spent money on that roster, and a lot of that money has been spent in the portal. They had 23 guys last cycle that they got out of the portal. They're averaging about 15 transfers a year over the last 3 years. And in context, a team like Georgia, who's not a big transfer team, they were averaging about 8 transfers a year over the last few seasons. So it seems like Florida State is having to fill more major gaps through the portal than high school recruiting. So that's where the front office apparatus becomes intriguing to me.
And that's been the big question, right? Because for the first couple of years of the portal, Mike Norvell was the portal king. He was really hitting on portal guys. And then now, quarterback position started with DJU, then Tommy Castellanos, wildly inconsistent. So you're right that they're spending the money, and they keep saying now for 2 years, we need the backbone of this program to be from high school players and like developing, but it seemed to be difficult for them, or that takes time. And then they're missing on the portal guys in addition to it.
And that's where I think the question really comes, because I do think the front office helps with evaluating high school guys and hitting on them, because there's either an evaluation issue or there's a development issue somewhere at Florida State because the high school guys haven't panned out. So the front office helps with that. But this is also an issue for me that's going to take more than a year to really evaluate for these guys. And I don't know how you do that over a quick amount of time. But as we've seen in college football, Ohio State is a team right now that has it's been built basically off of their high school recruiting, right? And you look at what a team like Alabama, for example, who's in that mix. I just mentioned Georgia. Like, these are teams that have done really well in identifying guys out of high school, and then those guys end up becoming legit players. And I think that's the thing I'd want to see out of Florida State. I just don't know if next year is going to be the year I can evaluate whether they've hit on those guys.
Well, his bosses are going to evaluate that when we get to next season. So that makes it, let's see, Florida State, Maryland, Wisconsin, Baylor, all bringing back coaches that are squarely on the hot seat, saying that they're investing more in the roster in moving forward. Another school that was I actually thought they were like a borderline hot seat, borderline going to make a decision, did make a decision. That was Cal, deciding to move on from Justin Wilcox. Ron Rivera is their GM. His name was on the press release announcing that Wilcox was out. He was 48-55 over 9 seasons. They're bowl eligible this season, but they lost badly to Stanford, 31-10. And Cal was the favorite. I think everyone on game day picked them to win that game. So it was a bad loss because Stanford is down this year. And that ended up being the final nail in the coffin for Justin Wilcox, who I actually think has done a pretty good job at Cal. What's fascinating here, and I know it's just one game left, but Nick Rolovich, the former Wazoo head coach, is the interim here, which that one spawned a lot of jokes with the Cowgorithm because of the way that he left Wazoo, refusing to get the vaccine and then going to Berkeley of all places.
The culture of Cal.
cultural clash there. But yeah, so he is the interim for the final game of the year.
We have had so many weird interims this year. Like, it is the year of the problematic interim.
A lot of names from the past. So this one were you surprised with? I mean, again, I know it's Cal and it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind, but bowl eligible. The last couple of years they found quarterbacks. Obviously Fernando Mendoza came from there. JKS now. Yeah. What do you make of it?
I was shocked by this one. And you mentioned it, like, this is a move that we could have seen, but I agree. I think Wilcox has done a very good job there. I think more and more Cal is becoming a difficult place to win too. And part of the reason why is because it's a high academic school. So like you just can't recruit any old body, but like, okay, so I'm in the ACC now and I've got to take half of my trips, like, coast to coast. Like, if I'm trying to recruit kids that are from the state of California, one of the things that you always used to do is like, be close to home and like your parents can come to all the games regionally. They can't do that anymore. It's like a very difficult place, I think, to find success in this day and age. And you had a guy who's doing a decent job. Now, the loss that they had to Stanford, unacceptable. And certainly you could see how they got there. This one feels to me like it might be a pivot point for this program where they're probably going to lose their quarterback, and they lost the last one, certainly. But like, where do you go from here? And what's your roster going to look like over the next couple of years? Because I can see the floodgates opening and it might be hard to replenish.
Yes. It's also a really interesting inflection point because Stanford is looking for a coach as well. So this is these two programs 1 year into being into the ACC and dealing with those new challenges. But, Andrew Luck has raised a ton of money and gotten a ton of investment in Stanford. Be interesting to see which candidates are interested in both of these jobs, who they land. We'll be able to compare them directly. So that is an interesting one. I also think Justin Wilcox will get scooped up as on a staff somewhere very quickly.
100%.
I want to talk about the big coaching decision that is hanging over the week. We have been arguing about it for the last week or so. The entire college football internet has been tracking flights and watching house hunting that's been happening in Baton Rouge and Gainesville. It's Lane Kiffin. It is, I saw somebody refer to him as like a future Bravo housewife. And I feel like that's part of the reason that you love this saga so much. Doesn't it feel like a Bravo show?
The perfect crossover. I keep telling people, sports, reality TV, they're one and the same.
Well, this definitely is, because this will he, won't he, will Lane Kiffin leave Oxford? When is the decision coming? His athletic director, Keith Carter, said on Friday night that Lane Kiffin will make a decision after the Egg Bowl about what his future is. He has toned down the tweets, the little inspirational messages and screenshots that he's been posting the last few weeks. And we will see. You got to the point where Trinidad Chambliss had to put out a statement being like, we're really focused on the Egg Bowl. Don't worry, fans. Like, I know, you're anxious and worrying about all of this. But ultimately, the question is, what is Lane Kiffin going to do? You have a couple different options here. Is he going to stay at Ole Miss and make this big, like, I'm back, the Leonardo DiCaprio meme moment after the Egg Bowl? Is he going to say that he's going to go to LSU? We know what the massive offer looks like. It's, $100 million, money that's guaranteed to go towards the NIL pot. Florida is still hanging out there, although it seems like maybe less of a front runner than LSU. And then the question of, okay, if you do leave, do you coach the team through a college football playoff berth? Part of the reason that Ole Miss is kind of trying to bring this to a head now is because I'm sure they don't want him to coach the team if he's leaving.
100%.
But do they have the leverage to force him to do that? Like, what happens if you bring in an interim and then they lose the first game? Like, there are so many outcomes here where I think the administration at Ole Miss and the fans at Ole Miss are just like absolutely devastated. And this ends up overshadowing one of the most successful seasons ever in the history of the program.
Yes.
So it's really messy. First of all, do you think we're going to get a final decision this weekend?
Yeah, I do. I do, because I think that there was probably one of those, like, if you don't make the decision, we'll make it for you type situations. And I think that would be appropriate if you're the university administration. I think everybody's in a rough spot here. And I know like a lot of the commentary is like only Lane Kiffin, right? Like this would only happen with Lane Kiffin. And people might be right about that. And if he comes back, then you end up looking extra dumb. But the idea of the midseason firing and then those schools being able to go out and like target a coach immediately, and those schools being conference schools who Ole Miss would have to recruit against, right? Like that whole part of it is crazy. The idea that he would need to make a decision, and it would be the next school would expect him to make a decision because of high school recruiting closing out. And then you want to make sure that you can get on the portal class as soon as it opens. Like if he's coaching that long into January, which I don't anticipate. But if he is, like, they want to make sure they have assurances for that. I think that's a bit of a screwed up part. And then I think the quiet part that nobody's really saying right now, but I'll say it, is we're reconciling this idea of Ole Miss in a historic year and the fact that they're a team who is squarely in the college football playoff with the fact that they're probably not a team that's going to win a national title, right? Like that's part of the calculus for Lane Kiffin. And he's asking, have I taken this place as far as it can go? They are having more success right now than they've ever had. They're trying to win their first championship since before they integrated the football team. That's what they're trying to do right now. And I think Lane Kiffin is asking, have I done the most I can here? And do I need to go somewhere else where I can actually win a title? And so I think there are so many of these factors of how the sport is structured today that play into the hottest candidate who has a playoff team right now, looking at jobs where you feel like I walk in there and I do the same thing I was doing at Ole Miss and 100% I'm winning a title. It's such an intriguing thing to me.
It is. I think that a lot of those ideas of like, I'll just walk in and win a title because of all the inherent advantages at LSU. Like we thought that with Brian Kelly, that he thought that when he took that job. So it's not necessarily a guarantee. I think what makes this really interesting is that we have seen programs that are not traditional blue bloods succeed in this era. Like certainly.
But have they won a title though?
Not yet.
But that's I think that's the main question is like he's succeeding, but I think his goal is to win a championship. And if that's the case, you have to ask yourself the question, can I actually do that here?
Okay, well then that's if he leaves, that's what he says, right? That's what he says to Ole Miss fans. He says, you know, we were not actually going to win a national title here. The reason that I think this is more of a Lane Kiffin issue than just a calendar issue, like I don't expect that this is something we'll have to deal with every single year, is I think other coaches shut this stuff down sooner. They decide, I'm going to ride this out. I'm going to see if we can win a championship. I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to sign an extension, or I'm just going to like totally say all the things so that no one even thinks they have a shot at me. Like we don't have this. We didn't have this conversation last year when Indiana was making the playoff, or this year with Indiana as a number 2 seed, you know, potentially all the way through, but as they are right now in the playoff rankings, because those coaches shut it down. I mean, obviously the coach at Indiana would be a prime candidate to take a better job. Like there's so many better jobs theoretically than Indiana, but Curt Cignetti didn't let that become a thing. And I think that, you know, even in the 4-team era, which again is different, there's less football to be played and the calendar looked a little bit different. You just didn't have people leaving teams that were contending for national titles to do this. Like the prime example was Brian Kelly leaving before Selection Sunday, but they were like on the bubble. They were like probably not going to make it. You know, I've been thinking a lot about the like the go-to example in college sports. You have to go all the way back to 1989, Michigan basketball. Bill Frieder says he's going to take the Arizona State job, expects to continue coaching Michigan. Bo Schembechler, the AD at that time, is like, nope, I'm going to have a Michigan man coach Michigan. It became like, you know, part of the lore. And Steve Fisher takes over and wins a national championship as the interim. Now, if I'm Ole Miss, I don't have a lot of leverage in this situation. So again, if he decides not to make a decision now, or he decides to leave but asks to coach through the run, I'd be really curious what they do. I think I would opt with like, I want an interim doing it or whatever. But like either way you lose, right? So either you keep him and he's distracted and maybe you lose in the first round. You put an interim in, you lose in the first. Either way, like people will be so angry. Like you cannot win. And so I just don't know. I don't know how this is going to resolve itself if he leaves. Like what would you do if you are Ole Miss and he says, hey, I want to go to LSU?
Yeah, and then I'd say pack your bags. We appreciate everything you've done
That's
for
what
us.
that's what I would do.
Like he can't do it. Like the biggest reason why is like people talk about the distraction. That's perfectly fine. Who's recruiting for Ole Miss? Because Lane Kiffin's going to be recruiting for LSU at that point. Like that's the whole reason why I can't do that. You're recruiting the same kids. Like you have to go. You can't be here. I know what you're saying about the Signetti thing. I think it's I don't think you can ask everybody to be like him though in that situation. Like
but I don't think it's just him. Like we didn't when Washington and again
when is
era,
another
Washington,
right? But I'm saying like in this era, when have we seen this? We've seen Signetti, and that's really it of like a guy who is squarely going to be in there, and you have an offer from
Kalen
schools
DeBoer though in the last year of the 4-team era. Washington, like that's not obviously, and he eventually went to Alabama. Like that's not like a necessarily a destination job for him, and he went somewhere else. But like
Saban retired after the year, though. You know, like
but I'm saying there was no question in the month of December leading into the semifinals or between
right because
semifinals
there was no question to ask. There was not the place for Kalen DeBoer to go necessarily. Like
there were other open jobs,
right?
There,
but
I mean, there's always
the
jobs.
job for him though. It wasn't Alabama. Alabama wasn't open. Like LSU is open right now. This is what I'm saying.
The thing.
This is a very specific like LSU, Alabama. Different.
LSU has opened every couple of years.
I know, but it's a different job is what I'm getting at. Like
I get it,
like
but
Penn State, I would have turned that down if I was Signetti too. Penn State hasn't won a title since before I was born. No shot. LSU.
But Joshua, you're saying like the timing has to be now, right? Like if you're Lane Kiffin, that job continues to open like every 3 years. And
I know, but you can't.
People don't take jobs all the time in every industry because the timing is bad.
Yeah, I know. But again, like this is one of those situations where I feel like you have to do your due diligence on it. Like you can't just say, oh, the timing is bad. Like this is it's a coaching career. Like there are windows to being able to get things done. And I feel like he's in a bad spot because the calendar is not great. And like, has he handled it well? I'm not saying he's handled it perfectly. I probably would have handled it a little bit differently than him.
I think
but I can't blame the way that he's handling it.
More of a public spectacle than it needed to be.
I know, because he has to look at it like he is doing his due diligence, and I don't know how you do
family
that.
To go house hunting in all the locations.
This is one of the big things that I feel like is in his like the money. I don't think is going to be the thing that makes a decision for him. Like how much he gets paid is what I'm saying. What it is does my family feel comfortable about this situation, and can I be one of those guys who wins a title? I think that's what Lane Kiffin's worried about right now. And so, yeah, I think his family kind of has to, because he's got like half of his family living in Oxford right now. Like, I think they have to be comfortable with wherever he might go coach.
I've got one more question for you. Is Lane Kiffin worth all of this mess and this drama? He has not made the college football playoff as a head coach, and he has not won a national championship. Very famously, Nick Saban had to cut him loose before winning a national championship because he got distracted with the FAU job. But I'm like, is he worth all this hassle?
I go back and forth on that one. I don't think if I was Ole Miss, it would be worth the hassle. I think if I was LSU, I would look and say what he's done at Ole Miss, if he comes in here and does similar things, we're going to win a championship. Like I think that's what everybody's looking at. It's this idea
I'm
of
not
like
convinced that though.
I'm not necessarily convinced either.
Has he made defensive hires and defensive improvements enough to win a national championship?
I don't think that's the case. But LSU's most recent national title, they didn't have a great defense that year. It was like the outlier year of like a team that just wasn't elite defensively that won a title. So like I'm sure they're willing to overlook that right now. He is, I think, out of the guys who want to leave a job or willing to leave a job, he's the one that I would be looking at as an established coach for sure.
Biggest name.
Like Signetti got wrapped up. Like after that, Lane Kiffin, sure.
I think that he became the big name by default because of your point that he's willing to leave.
He's willing.
Of the coaches willing to leave. And I just think that everyone's convinced, because it's become a little bit of like a Lane Kiffin sweepstakes, that like he's the only one that would win the press conference, that would be like considered a home run hire. Whoever gets
Lane,
get over
Kiffin. Winning press conferences.
No, but listen, aren't you thinking that this is the only? If he goes somewhere else, that would be the only fan base that's like fully happy.
I get what you're saying, but that's an insane way to hire a coach.
I know, but I'm saying like this year we've been talking about.
Yes.
That, like there's not going to be.
I get what you're saying.
Going to have a faction of fans that are going to be disappointed.
There'll be a lot of fans that are going to be disappointed.
Yeah, but I think
Florida fans.
Like, well,
there'll be a lot of Florida fans that'll be disappointed if Lane goes to LSU. People will be pissed.
So So it's like if we get Lane, that's the win in this carousel, regardless, right? And so I think that that's part of what's happening here, and the all-in nature. I will tell you though, Joshua, I've talked to a lot of different athletic directors about this in the last week or so, and some who might be affected by like some of the dominoes that could happen depending on where Lane goes, and then others that are just kind of watching from afar. And everyone needs him to make a decision, like really needs him to make a decision, because you need to know, hey, is Florida going to move on? Is LSU going to move on? Does Ole Miss open now? And do they get in like the John Summerall sweepstakes, right? With Auburn, right? Because he's a perfect fit for both of those places. Like, I think that, or elsewhere, like, I don't know, Jed Fish. Does Jed Fish like try to get Ole Miss? I don't know. Like, there's just a lot of potential scenarios here. And so I do think the decision needs to get made. Like,
it's an interesting thing, but I'll reiterate this. I think one of the biggest takeaways that we need to address here is reconciling the idea of being in the playoff versus a coach telling us that they might not believe that they have a contender because they're looking at other jobs right now. That's the era that we're in.
I think that's probably why Ole Miss fans are really upset.
Yeah, because he's telling them the truth about themselves and they don't like hearing it.
Not great. Okay, we'll be pretty quick on this. We're getting new CFP rankings tonight. We're recording this on Tuesday this week because it's the holiday week. Only really a couple of differences that I'm expecting to see, JP. We can look at my projected bracket. This is what I put it together over the weekend. The top 14 teams that were ranked either won or did not play. So not expecting a lot of changes. I don't think Oregon is going to jump up higher after they get their first big win over USC, because their best win is not as good as Ole Miss's win, and Ole Miss is right ahead of them. So I'd keep them in the same order. The big question to me is going to be about the teams that are right on the other side of the cut line: BYU, Utah, Miami, and Texas. Because, so first of all, I flipped Miami and Utah because I think giving up 472 rushing yards is indefensible. And I think, although this committee clearly is like, oh, if you win, you win. Winning is hard, which they did with A&M after that wild game against South Carolina, where they said the second half of the game like offset the first half of the game, which was a little bit crazy.
I think technically they could, it did, because they won the second half and they lost the first half. So
yes, but they're like, oh yeah, that like neutralized the first half. I was like, okay, weird. I don't know that the way that Utah won the game over a team that is now under 500 in K-State will neutralize what they allowed in that game. So anyway, I would flip Miami, put Miami ahead of Utah, which, by the way, is where Miami should have been taking aim. They should have been taking aim at BYU and Utah this whole time in the arguments in the public sphere. I also think, and you brought this to my attention first, I think, the teams between Vanderbilt and Texas both lost, and that head-to-head should come back into play. So Texas should be within striking distance now, ahead of their game against Texas A&M. But otherwise, like, I think we're going to see pretty straightforward exactly what we're looking at. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, I put Virginia in as my projected ACC champion because I'm over it. I'm tired of putting Miami just because they are ranked the highest. We need to treat them as an at-large team until proven otherwise. And I'm going to put teams that are more likely to actually play in the ACC championship game in that spot. And I think we are, by the way, out of the woods on this. The ACC champion will be ranked higher than the Sun Belt champion and these other leagues. Like that champion is getting in. So we can call it the ACC champion spot.
Yes. Yep. No, I agree with that. Good clarification there. And I also, we should have a conversation with the people who do that show, and tell them that they shouldn't have a team that's only path is an at-large in the bracket as the conference representative.
Too confusing.
It is. It's really confusing. And I think this rollout over the first 2 years has confused enough people anyway. So we should stop doing that. I'm with you. Like, the bracket this week doesn't feel like it's going to change a ton. Where I'm intrigued is the teams outside of the bracket and the paths that they have. And you mentioned with Utah and BYU and Miami, like, those all intrigue me. How they handle Texas, I think, is going to be a huge thing for a number of reasons. There's the Texas side of it where they have one more loss than Vanderbilt. And so Vanderbilt fans would obviously be like, hey, man, they got one more loss. But Texas is also going to be like, we beat you and we also beat Oklahoma. So our marquee win is better than anything that you have. Vanderbilt feels like they're one of those teams that will have a 10-2 resume. And I don't know how big their fan base is, but we'll find out because they will be going crazy. It feels like their path is very narrow, even as a team that could be 10-2.
Out of the SEC. It's a really
out
good
of the
point.
SEC. Yeah.
I feel like that
Interesting
is
to
something
watch.
that we'll be talking about. We're going to give you a quick Vanderbilt Tennessee preview a little bit later in the show. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Joshua, I want to wrap up one thread from the weekend. We were recording the Saturday night pod during the Georgia Tech Pitt game. I just want some final thoughts on that. I mean, Pitt knocking Georgia Tech out of CFP consideration, the way that it's happened, the way that Georgia Tech's defense has been the last 3 games, but also just like what Pitt did, jumping out all over them. They survived even that like disastrous fake punt call where Pat Narduzzi afterwards just was like, it was asked about it. He's like, I'm a dumbass. It was just like a great Pat Narduzzi moment.
Thank you for owning your dumbassery.
Yeah, like it was great. It was great. But it didn't cost them. They ultimately were able to beat Georgia Tech. Final thoughts on that and just sort of like closing that chapter in the ACC chaos?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia Tech, man, you let Haynes King down. That's like my biggest takeaway off of what these last few weeks have looked like. That man looked like he was willing to give his life on a football field. The way that he was running, the risk that he put his body at. And by the way, this might have been his best season as a passer, right? Like he became a legitimate threat to throw the football, not just a guy who was like a tough, gritty running quarterback. And you squander his performance away off of some defense that cannot get stops. It's insane. I'm going to get on Pat Narduzzi here for a sec. He really bothered me in the lead up to his game against Notre Dame. You got game day coming there. It's one of the big matchups, and you're like, we could lose. I don't care. We just got to win our remaining conference games. And I think you could tell by the way they started that game that his game plan the whole Notre Dame week was for Georgia Tech. They didn't spend an ounce of time trying to stop Jeremiah Love and trying to rattle CJ Carr and trying to figure out how they were going to move the ball against a defense that is much improved for Notre Dame. They said, screw it. Every ounce of our energy is going into beating Georgia Tech. And by the way they started that game, it was evident.
Yeah. See, I kind of think it's funny.
Insane.
And if they win out, get a loss from Virginia and SMU and play in the ACC championship game, it's like one of the all-time great called shots to me. It's just
no, I don't want to validate that kind of behavior. I really don't. But like,
I will validate it.
He
validate
knew
it.
where to put his resources, and
it
sucks that that's what you can do. But he did it.
That's another game, by the way, that we will preview a little bit later in today's show. Before we get to the walkthrough and look at these rivalry weekend games, it's time for Imagine That, presented by Xfinity. We will paint you a picture of something we think could happen. It's in the realm of possibilities. Joshua, I'm going to give you the floor first.
All right. So I mentioned it, but Vanderbilt gets the win over Tennessee, and now they're sitting there at 10-2 with a very intriguing at-large case that probably goes unheard by the committee. They're not going to have any ranked wins. They're going to have 2 losses to the 2 teams that they played that are legitimate college football playoff teams, like teams that are in the conversation heading into this weekend. And I think it's going to be intriguing how their fans react to it, how that team reacts to it, but also what are our conversations going to be? Because the thing that we talked about last week was a Big Ten team in Oregon. And because of the way the Big Ten schedules are and how unbalanced that league is, and the bottom of the league really sucks, that they could be 10-2 and get left out. And now we're going to have to really address this idea of the SEC being the same damn thing, where Vanderbilt is going to be 10-2 with a resume that is not very good at all because they drew a bunch of teams that they could beat in conferences. Not to disrespect them, because I do think that they have legitimately earned their record. But we're going to have to address the idea that the SEC is the same thing when it comes to the bottom of the conference, and in that these big conferences have really unbalanced schedules where A&M doesn't have the same schedule as Georgia or Alabama. And you can say the same thing about Ole Miss, but Vanderbilt's going to be the one that's holding the bag because they don't have any of the good wins. So it'll be interesting.
It's also because there's like a top and a bottom of the SEC. There's not a lot in the middle this year. So again, like when you think about potential outcomes, even when we were talking like at the end of September, we're like, oh, there's going to be more losses around for these contenders. I don't think we would have thought this many teams could have ended up 10-2, like all 10-2. Because I think in the most part, you're, in a vacuum, you're saying 10-2 in the SEC or the Big Ten is in. And that may not be the case. So that will be very controversial if that happens. We will see. We'll preview that game in just a second. Imagine that one of the underdogs in the Friday games pulls off the upset. So maybe two. Last time I called for an upset in like a conference with the ACC, I got 2 of them, 2 out of 3.
You did.
I think we're going to get at least one. So refresher, the big games on Friday this year, you've got the Egg Bowl. So I'm calling for either Mississippi State to beat Ole Miss, or Georgia Tech to beat Georgia, or Texas to beat Texas A&M. The one that's least likely is Georgia Tech beating Georgia, because one of those teams is trending in one direction, one of those teams is trending in the other. But the other two you could talk me into. You've got the Lane Kiffin saga hanging over the Egg Bowl, very much distracting. Nick Saban literally had to get rid of Lane Kiffin off his staff when he took another job because
Lane,
he gets
just
distracted.
Just go, Lane. You're no longer needed here.
Distracted. So that could happen. Also, Mississippi State has played a lot of SEC teams very close this year. The other game that's really interesting is Texas and Texas A&M. This is the Super Bowl for Texas. A&M has been shaky at times. We've seen them win games a lot of different ways. We have seen the worst half of football from any title contender the first half against South Carolina.
Say that again.
The worst half of football from any title contender was Texas A&M against South Carolina in the first half.
Oh man, I just reliving that. Football. Oh, it's awful.
I will never forget it. It's going to be part of the reason that I won't pick them to go all the way to the national championship game, regardless of path. I will also say Texas plays better at home. Arch Manning has been playing a lot better as of late. And I think they're going to be within striking distance of a playoff spot if they win this. So it's the Super Bowl for Texas. This is the game to put it all together, play your most complete game of the season. I know the defense has had lapses at times, but the talent is there on that side of the ball. Offense playing a lot better. That is the one I think is most likely to happen, but I will also say the Egg Bowl. So I think one of the 3 massive games on Friday, we are going to see an underdog win and shake up the CFP picture.
I hope it happens. I'm rooting for chaos, except for my alma mater. This is the 1 week I'm going to take the big J hat off and say that I do have a rooting interest in at least one of these games. But yeah, give me a little bit of chaos to end the season. One of the things that I appreciate off of the chaos that can happen is forcing the hand of the committee. I want to hear them defend moves that they would have to make, and that's why I root for chaos a lot of times.
I would love to see what they would do to Texas.
I do
Texas
too.
With a win over
I want to
A&M.
see. I want to see what happens.
How far would a team fall? So if Ole Miss were to lose, we saw Alabama fell significantly.
They tumbled
after their loss. We have seen some big drops. So anyway, this committee loves losses. I would love to see them deal with a couple more significant losses and see what they do. That was Imagine That presented by Xfinity. It is time to dive into these games. Rivalry weekend, final weekend of the regular season, massive stakes in a lot of these games. Let's start with Georgia Tech, clean old-fashioned hate. I said this before, one of these teams is moving in one direction, the other team is moving in the other. I would say a month ago, this might have been the most interesting game of the weekend and most potential for chaos, a Georgia Tech win, but it's a lot less exciting after 2 losses and just really 3 poor performances. Georgia Tech is allowing an average of 510.7 yards per game in the last 3 games. Not how you want to play in November. You mentioned this earlier, Joshua, kind of wasting an all-time season from Haynes King. He has done so much for this team. Obviously, he's a huge part of the rushing attack, but he's been really, really good through the pass, through the air the last few weeks, has really stretched himself as a passer. But this just feels like it is going to be all Georgia. They're favored by almost 2 touchdowns. That feels right to me.
It feels right to me too. I've said this about Georgia. They feel like the biggest threat in college football to any of the teams that are sitting up there and just have kind of had the smooth season. I'm talking about Ohio State. I'm talking about Indiana. I'm talking about A&M. Like, I look at Georgia and I'm like, I want to play those guys. I don't think any of those teams want to see Georgia the way they're playing right now. And that's a bad thing for Tech because, as you mentioned, Tech is a team I'd want to see right now. Let me play Tech. Let me get my points up. It's going to be obviously wild. In what last year was the 8 overtime game.
Yes, last year.
Right. And so I know Georgia fans are very much the way that I am this week, where it's like, Georgia Tech, can't count them out, whatever the case is. Like, no, you're a better football team and you're playing better football right now. And there's no reason why this game has to be close. You put this in the notes. It's something that I mentioned on Saturday. I think we should talk about it real quick. But is this a spot where if Gunnar Stockton really balls out, and I'm talking about, he 75% completion and he throws for 4 touchdowns and he runs another one, is this a spot where we could see him maybe earn his way to New York City?
I think it's possible. I think that there's a couple people I would pencil in right now. I think I would pencil in Fernando Mendoza, Julian Sayin, and now Jeremiah Love. The nation has woken up and realized how good Jeremiah Love is. So those 3 feel like locks. I think between like Ty Simpson, Marcel Reed, Gunnar Stockton, we could get 2 of those guys. So I think that is possible. It would help too if Georgia ends up playing in the SEC championship game.
No doubt.
Joshua, here is a fun fact. The Heisman changed the timing of their ballot this year. So they sent an email out last night, Monday night, and they said, you're only going to have 48 hours to vote this year. So you used to get the ballot basically like with a week to vote. So you could vote before conference championship games ended. And now you can't because you'll get the ballot on Saturday evening.
Interesting.
So you really may have an advantage if you're playing that weekend just for, lasting impressions. Georgia needs Alabama or Texas A&M to lose in order to make the SEC championship game. That would help his case if he plays in that.
All right. So the old heads are probably heated about that email because they love sending in their ballots early.
Probably. I'm like, you should be able to remember in that 48-hour period that you should vote. And you should take into consideration what we see that Saturday.
Yeah.
You want to make a pick on this one?
Yeah, I'm picking Georgia. I'm picking them to cover in this game. As I said, they feel as dangerous as anybody in college football right now. I think Kirby's gotten exactly what he wants his team to look like at the end of the year.
I am with you as well. Georgia to cover. It's November, championship football time, and Georgia is playing championship football. So I will take them to cover as well. Let's go to Austin, Texas A&M, Texas. I am super excited for this game. Texas has played a lot better at home, which I think is really important as you look at this game. Arch Manning has been playing a lot better as of late. His stat line from last week was hilarious and awesome. He passed for 4 touchdowns, ran for 1, caught another. So finally, kind of the Arch Manning showed up.
Give him the Heisman.
Give him the Heisman, the preseason Heisman. As I mentioned, the defense has a lot of individual talent. It has not always played consistently, but there is talent there. It's an A&M team that has been inconsistent throughout the course of the season. They have figured out ways to win a lot of these games, but been inconsistent and played the bottom half of the SEC schedule, like feasted on bottom half SEC teams. So this really does feel like an opportunity to create a season-altering upset and result and win. This would also obviously impact the SEC championship game because A&M win and into Atlanta to play for that. Texas, as we said earlier, could scoot up a little bit in the CFP rankings, so they might be really close on the bubble if that, the 2 teams ahead of them lost this past week. They have a head-to-head win over Vanderbilt. They could be right there knocking on the door. This could be the kind of win that could push them over the top and really be the only 9-3 team that gets consideration for the CFP. Aggies favored by 2.5 points on the road. What do you make of it?
Well, this is one of those where I don't like either one of these defenses right now. And we've seen great out of both of them at times during the season. I think A&M has been a little bit more of like the roller coaster. And I think Texas has been a little bit more of like the wheels have started to fall off. They're 14th in the SEC in scoring defense. Texas is in November.
Supposed to be one of the best defenses in the country.
Yes, giving up 34 points per game. And so when I look at these defenses and then I look at the offenses that they're going to have to face, where Arch Manning has 100% been much better. And Steve Sarkisian has finally figured out how to call plays for that quarterback. And then, Marcel Reed, like maybe he throws it to the wrong team in some situations a little bit too much, but he's a dynamic runner and he's got a live arm, and they've got Craver and Concepcion and all those guys. First to 40 okay. Points wins this ball game. That's the way that I feel about it here. I think it's going to be an offensive explosion, a lot of fireworks there, but it's going to be a race to 40 points.
You want to make a pick?
I'm going to make a pick here. I'm rooting for chaos, so I'm picking chaos. Texas wins outright.
I'm taking Texas to cover. Not sure if I want them to win, but I think this is going to be like a really close game and a crazy one. A&M's been in a lot of those.
They have.
A lot of really close
figured out how to win them, but they've been in some crazy games.
All right, it's time to talk about the game. I am a Michigan grad. You are an Ohio State Buckeye. This is the game. It needs no names, no nicknames, no trophies. It's the big one. Everything is at stake as usual. Ohio State winning into the Big Ten championship game. Michigan can ruin that. Wouldn't cost Ohio State a playoff spot, but
Michigan
it would probably get Michigan in.
Find their way into the Big Ten championship too. There's some scenarios.
There is a scenario where we have a Michigan-Ohio State rematch in the Big Ten championship game 1 week after this, which is crazy. There's what, 8 scenarios here? 4 teams still
7
live.
Scenarios, yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously the most likely scenario is Ohio State, Indiana. Indiana's got Purdue this week, so we're not expecting them to lose that game. Oregon is still live. Crazy? That one would actually be insane. That would be like one of the most shocking result of the entire season.
Yeah.
Oregon's still in the mix. And again, so is Michigan, because if they beat Ohio State, they would get in. This is a really interesting game this year because of how well Ohio State has played. They've been the most dominant team in the country all season long. They have barely been tested. They have not been in a close game really since week 1 against Texas. They're a totally different team than they were then. The offense was really limited. The play calling was really limited in that game. And you've got a Michigan team that is a lot better than last year's team. And last year's team somehow managed to beat Ohio State before they went and won a national title. They won it with 62 passing yards. They had a bunch of pros, right? We talked a lot about this at the time. Ohio State kept trying to run it up the middle, right into future first-round draft picks for Michigan. But ultimately, that's what makes this game particularly interesting, because last year I was convinced there was no way Ohio State was going to lose that game.
Same.
I'm not going to say that this year, but I think I feel really good about Ohio State's chances here. I mean, obviously they're favored by 10 points, but I don't think, and you and I have talked about this all week, we don't think Ryan Day is going to be fixated on the idea that he's got to outgain Michigan on the ground, that they've got to run the ball to win this game. I think he's going to actually play into the strengths of his team.
I'm there with you. And frankly, I think if he wants to run it at all, the idea is to throw the ball to run it. This is a Michigan defense that is in the 50s nationally in passing defense. And we heard, because Jeremiah Smith is a question, Carnell Tate is a question. Jeremiah Smith went on Caleb Downs' podcast and said he should be good to go. That's a quote, should be good to go. So if you have him and Carnell Tate is trending in the right direction to play in that game, if you start hitting a couple of passes, Michigan might play some coverages that dedicate a little bit more resources there. That's where you want to run the ball if that's what you want to do. But the strength of this offense has been the quarterback that is historically efficient throwing the football, the alien who has to come back next year because he's not even draft eligible, and the other wide receiver who has worked his way into the first round conversation. That's it. And that's what the plan should be for Ohio State. Now, I think what has become interesting about Michigan is when you and I watch them against Oklahoma, for example, we're like, this is not a good football team, and I don't know how many games they're going to win. They're a much better football team right now. They're super young. Their offensive line is young. True freshman quarterback who's improved in a lot of ways. He's a dangerous threat with his legs. You've got a true freshman wide receiver in Andrew Marsh, who you and I both talk about. That guy's going to play in the league. Really good player, right? In the running back room that's banged up, but they still got guys. And it doesn't matter who's touching the rock. Like, they're going to want to run the football. I think that this is the best version of Michigan that we're going to see is this Saturday. And so Ohio State's got to go up against that. But if you're Ohio State with that offense, we haven't even talked really about the defense, which Arvell Reese, elite player, right? Like, guy who can spy. Bryce Underwood in situations, Caleb Downs, put them all over the field. You're a better football team. got to win the game, right? Like that's what it comes down to, is just being the better football team that Saturday.
Yeah, and to see if Ryan Day can actually get through this mental block, right?
Yeah.
Because he has approached this game, called this game, or allowed it to be called very differently than the way that they have played other big games. So that's part of it. And listen, we have seen the same with Sharon Moore.
Yeah.
He has been very aggressive in this game, and done what needs to be done, but a lot of fourth down calls, a lot of like aggressive play calling that we don't see in their other big games, like when they played Oklahoma, for example. Very conservative. So there's definitely some psychological pieces to this on both sides, that have led to this 4-game winning streak for Michigan. Can I make you make a pick on this one?
Yeah, I'm going to make a pick real quick. Just wanted to say this about the game. People on social media have been talking about the weather forecast. And
I wanted to bring this up. Okay, it's a high of 31 and it's going to snow. So can Julian Sand still throw it?
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. It was the thing that folks had made excuses about, unfortunately, a few years ago. I think the last time they were up or maybe 2 times before that, they were up in Ann Arbor, was snow. And what I saw from Ohio State in a home playoff game against Tennessee, where they were just bombing the football down the field, like, I'm cool. They can play in elements. They have to be mentally together. That's the only thing stopping them. Ohio State's going to get back in the win column. I am talking myself into confidence this week. They're a better football team in a better spot. They made the mistake last year of trying to play a different game than what they do. I don't think Ryan Day's a dummy. I don't think he's doing that again. I think Ohio State's winning. And frankly, I think Ryan Day really wants this one. 10 points, they might cover that.
I'm going to take them to cover it, because I think that when you are trying to break some sort of streak or trying to get past something mentally, it's you got to do it big. If it gets tight, if it's a close game, all of the mental blocks, all of the, just the nerves, everything, the tightness comes into play. So I think they will win and they will cover, because I think you have to win that way. It needs to be kind of therapeutic, cathartic. It needs to be a big win. And honestly, that's how Michigan snapped the losing streak. That's
exactly how they did it. And
they had to do it that way. Like,
you want to see Michigan fans leaving early. You want to see that thing clearing out early in the fourth quarter. If you're Ohio State and you're Ryan Day,
and there's no way to make a decision or do anything out of nerves late in the game.
Right.
To lose it.
You just play your game because the game is going that way.
That's what I've got. So we will see. Also, by the way, the game that you're talking about with the snow, I was there. That actually snapped the streak. That was the one that Michigan won to snap the streak. So cannot wait to watch that one with you. We will see. It's always a great 3 hours with Joshua Perry. He is.
Nicole, I'll say this about Nicole. You're a good sport, because other people who I could watch that game with that have Michigan affiliations would run their mouth way more than you do. And so I'm glad that if I have to watch the game with a Michigan person, it is you.
Thank you. Also, last year I was just in shock because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So that was part of the reason.
I think we were both.
Everything was a little muted. Quick, we're gonna have some bonus game previews, because again, there's so many good ones. I want to get your thoughts on Miami versus Pitt. Miami favored by 7 points in this game. We talked a little bit about this earlier. Pat Narduzzi said, "I don't care about Notre Dame. If we win our last 2 games, we can control what we can control in the ACC and maybe get a chance to play for the ACC title." So they knocked off Georgia Tech, even without Des Reed, by the way, in that game. And now we wonder if they're going to knock Miami out of the CFP. Pitt does need a little bit of help. Oh, I thought I had the scenario here about how to get to the championship game. But SMU and Virginia are winning in, so Pitt would need some help to go play for this and potentially play for the auto bid for the ACC. This feels like a opportunity for Pitt to do just that. Mason Heinschel has been great against everybody that is not Notre Dame, which they made his life hell. But outside of that, he's been awesome. And Carson Beck loves to throw interceptions at bad times. So I am leaning Pitt in this game.
I think Pitt's pulling off the upset. I'm totally going for it. We just talked about weather. It's going to be a little chilly. These Miami guys, they're fine playing in rain. I don't know if they're great playing in the cold. So we'll have to see how that goes. And Pitt is tied 10th in picks nationally, also tied for second in pick sixes. So for a quarterback who throws picks in bunches, like this is not a defense that you want to have to throw against.
Plus, Miami fans have been clamoring for a playoff spot for weeks. It would be kind of fitting for a wild season that it was if they play their way out of it.
Is Miami Twitter the worst Twitter fan base this year? They have been going after everybody. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. They've been clowning Ohio State. They've been clowning Alabama. They've been clowning Notre Dame. Like, they are at everybody's neck right now.
That is maybe a good question. Usually it's like FSU Twitter, but I feel like they've been muted for the last 2 years ever since that guy didn't eat dog poop.
Yeah, they've gone away a little bit. The Miami Twitter right now is, Ohio State Twitter is always bad. I got to say that, full disclosure. Miami Twitter might be taking the cake right now.
You know who's actually the best this year? Oklahoma. The way that they embraced
Dr.
the hand
Shin.
surgeon for John Mateer,
yes,
who he went to the game and did horns down, which was incredible. Incredible. Okay, so they're the most, because all the photoshopped Dr. Shin stuff was incredible.
We should do a ranking at the end of each year, by the way, because we were on the algorithm before, like, people really were on that. So we should do a best and worst at the end of the year.
We should. Okay, so I'm going to take Pitt to win outright in this game.
Love that.
Okay. Vandy versus Tennessee. Vols favored by 2.5 points. Really haven't talked about Tennessee in a while because they are no longer in the CFP picture. Offense still rolling, still really prolific, really productive, going to score a lot of points. Diego Pavia and company, that offense has also gotten rolling. There was kind of a lull where it wasn't really doing much, and yards seemed to be very hard to come by in the middle of the season.
When they played the good teams.
When they played Missouri and the better teams on their schedule.
There's a trend there.
But ultimately, Diego Pavia is coming off of a 500 plus yardage performance on his own. And this is just a team that is going to be able to, I think, match the scoring of Tennessee. Obviously, they've got so much at stake trying to play for a CFP berth. And the Tennessee team that I don't trust their defense to get stops. They are 75th in FBS in total defense. They're one of the worst defenses in the SEC in terms of yardage allowed. 98th in FBS and allowing plays of 10 yards or more from scrimmage. So I just feel like they're not going to be able to get enough stops to hold Vanderbilt and allow their offense to pull away in this game. And so I give the edge to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, first to 40 game. This is another one of those. I think that both of these teams will be able to move the football for various reasons here. I think that I like the edge for Vanderbilt because they are playing for a spot in the college football playoff, in theory, like an at-large bid, whether it's people want to put them in there or not. Diego Pavia is also playing for some Heisman votes as well. And you can't undersell that. Like, I know I made fun of it, but I totally get where the guy is at. Like, he was begging to stay in the game basically when it was garbage time so he could run up some more stats. And like, I think that Diego is going to go out here and try to put his best performance on tape as his final performance of the year. So to me, if he plays well, Vanderbilt's absolutely winning this game, and I anticipate those things will happen.
Time for underdog picks. We teased a couple of these already over the way that we've talked about some of these teams. Our personal records have been very bad. We're both 5-8 on the season, so maybe don't trust us or go the opposite of our games for underdog picks. I just told you mine. It's Pitt +7 versus Miami. Pitt is going to, I'm calling them to win, but I think they're going to knock off two of the ACC's top CFP contenders in consecutive weeks. Here's my scenario. I knew I had it somewhere. Okay, Pitt is into the ACC championship game with a win and a loss by either Virginia or SMU. So they're very close. Pat Narduzzi's prediction may come true. Sacrifice Notre Dame to win the next two and play for an ACC title. I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to win the game outright.
Like that pick. I would pick them as well. I'm, again, rooting for different scenarios that present some chaos and all the different things that can happen here. So that's part of the reason why I want this to happen. My regular underdog, I'm picking Wisconsin. They're a 1.5 point dog. They're on the road versus Minnesota. Obviously, storied rivalry here. listen, this is a different Wisconsin team that's been playing over the last probably 5 weeks or so. They gave Oregon a tough game. They have beaten 2 teams that are CFP ranked, and they hadn't done that in a season since like 2021 or 22 or something like that. They gave Indiana probably a little bit more of a tough game than Indiana was expecting. Like that first half, they didn't pull away. And Minnesota, like I love their team. I love their program. I am a PJ Fleck fan, but like I'm all in on Wisconsin being able to get one last win to end the season, a rivalry game, and people feel some momentum going into that offseason.
Since they decided that they're bringing Luke Fickell back, 2 wins where they rushed the field to celebrate.
I'm loving it. I'm
Trending
loving it. So,
in an upward direction. I like that.
This is another
pick.
one, by the way, where I'm biased. Like I have a rooting interest in this game. I know a lot of guys over there for Wisconsin. I want them to end it right. So here's me taking off the big J cap again.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, Superdog picks 10 plus or more points. I'll go first here. And I hate this for my friends who go to Virginia. I know they're extremely nervous about this game already. And so I do think you need to have some faith that our picks are horrendous this season. So this might be a good luck charm for you. But I am going to take Virginia Tech to cover 10 points at Virginia. This is a weird rivalry game. Now, we always talk about throw out the records, et cetera, et cetera. But let's just talk about the history in this one. The Hokies have won 19 of the last 20 meetings in this game. There have been some bad Virginia Tech teams.
Yes, there
that
have
beat Virginia during this stretch. So I completely understand the nerves here for Virginia, which is winning into the ACC championship game. And this is a Hokie team that has been, has kind of been blown out by a number of ACC teams. They're going through a very weird scenario here where you've got an interim coach and an interim staff and players, but James Franklin is already hired in there. And it's like, this is just strange dynamic of who's in charge and you're thinking about the future, but got to get through the present. It's weird. Even weirder would be beating Virginia, like the best Virginia team in a while, and knocking them out of the ACC championship game. I don't know if I'm going to call them to win the game, but they're definitely covering 10 points. It's not going to be easy if Virginia is going to win this game.
Yeah, I like it. This is, I agree with you, one of the weirder rivalries out there. Virginia has also, again, been one of those teams where it's like, a little bit high variance. They've had to win some games.
They love overtime. Overtime.
Probably low win expectancy after the game if you're into some of those analytics. So I like that pick. All right. So me and you with these super dogs are setting up a scenario for Pitt to go to the ACC championship is the conclusion that I've come to. I'm taking Cal. They're hosting SMU. Cal's a 13.5 point dog. This is a vibes pick completely, but it's a long trip for SMU, like not the longest trip you could have in the ACC, but like you got to fly out there. Now, short trip and an interim bump, which I don't know if you can have for the last game of the regular season, but we've seen these teams get a little bit of bump after having an interim coach there. So all vibes for me on that pick, vibes of the inputs there and vibes of trying to get Pitt to the ACC championship, which I guess now we're rooting for.
The Calgoritham let me down a couple times. I picked them a few times. I picked them the wrong weeks whenever they would actually cover or win these games. So I'm wishing you the best of luck. I want the Calgorithms to be on your side.
Listen, this has been a complete crapshoot for me. I've been asset picking these games. So like, whatever.
I've been a little bit better than you on the Super Dogs. I'm 2-3. You're 1-4, but we have not had a great season. Hopefully we'll do better in the postseason. I feel like maybe we'll know a little bit more about these teams and we could just pick all the games.
Crossed.
We'll try. I can't wait because the next time we chat, Joshua, we will be through these games. We will have seen all of these rivalry games. We've seen all these meaningful games. We'll know who's going to be playing in these conference championship games. The first weekend in December will be a little bit closer to the college football playoff field. So I'm really excited. Happy Thanksgiving. I will see you and we will watch the game together on Saturday. And then we will pod afterwards for our Saturday night show as well. So stay tuned, follow, rate, subscribe, all of the things. For Rushing the Field, we will get your rivalry week action over the weekend. You can have it over your morning coffee on Sundays. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. Best week of the year in college football. Best week of the year holiday-wise as well. We will see you this weekend. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. This is Rushing the Field presented by Xfinity. And enjoy the games. We'll talk to you soon.